The word woman does not appear even once in the U.S. Constitution.
Nor does the word freedom, Your Honor.
Yes, I am RBG. While standing on the steps of the Federal Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, gazing at the shadows cast by the marble columns, suddenly remembered the night in 1956 when I was confronted by the Dean of Harvard Law School. I would never have imagined that this seemingly impossible case would be the beginning of something that would change the history of American law. Let me start at the beginning. As I stepped into Harvard Law School, chilly wind swirled fallen leaves against the hem of my skirt, as icy and biting as the hostility toward women in this era. When the professor asked the first question, I raised my hand almost as a reflex, only to see his gaze pass over me and land on the boy in the back row. That boy answered incorrectly. I raised my hand again, but it was still ignored.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Raising my hand a third time, I heard my name come out of the professor's mouth.
He did not simply promise to fix George Hawkins' hand. He promised, quote, a 100% good hand.
Did get damages. The court said he could
If I may finish?
With disdain. I ignored the disruption from the male student in the back and gave a perfect answer. The professor finally utters the first compliment of the class. There are only 9 girls out of 500 students. We were not a glorified minority, but intruders. At the freshman dinner, Dean Erlin's wine glass shimmered arrogantly in the light.
And why you're occupying a place at Harvard that could have gone to a man.
When the first girl said she wanted to be a lawyer like her father, I saw approval at the corners of the dean's mouth. When it was the next girl's turn to say she didn't want to be bound by marriage, it wasn't applause that interrupted her, but snickers. Otherwise, go home and be a good wife after you've finished your studies? The dean's expression wasn't very nice, but it was exactly what I wanted to see. At that moment, I realized, in this ivory tower, my weapon can only be sharper than men's wisdom. But the test of fate came too soon. Husband Martin's testicular cancer diagnosis was like a death sentence, 95% mortality. Then we had to fight for that 5%. And so I began the days, running to school first thing in the morning, listening to my own classes during the day, and rushing into my husband's classroom at night to take 2 copies of my notes, coming home to paraphrase the class to him, and late at night, after tucking my crying daughter into bed, banging away at both of their homework assignments on my typewriter. One autumn passed like this. The lucky 5% favored us. Martin was miraculously cured, but I was forced to say goodbye to Harvard. The day I applied for transfer, the clerk in the Harvard registrar's office looked at me with pity. You know what this means, right? Of course, I knew what it meant. It meant that I would have to complete 2 years of classes in 1 year, and it meant that I would have to juggle school, family, and my husband's recovery all at the same time. At Columbia's commencement ceremony in 1959, I thought I had a bright future ahead of me. During the New York law firm recruiting season, I knocked on the doors of 12 firms wearing my best suit and the perfect resume. The interviewers' eyes looked like they were scrutinizing merchandise. Married woman? When are you going to have your second child? You should be a secretary, not a lawyer. You'll be too busy with housework to be productive. Until the 13th time, the other person's eyes were like a cold knife.
Other wives, they get jealous.
As I stood on the streets of New York watching the traffic engulf the people, I suddenly remembered my mother's dying word: become a lady, but always be independent. The decency of a lady is too much in the face of prejudice. Since the law firm didn't want me, I created my own stage. I retired to teach at Rutgers University and began deconstructing the prejudices carved into the code in my classroom. The turnaround came in the late fall of 1972. Martin put Charles Moritz's tax refund case before me. This single male had been denied a tax deduction for caring for his mother simply because the law recognized caregiving as a female vocation. Oil stains swirled across the case file like the absurd stains of the system. The day he visited his client, he was hunched over scrubbing his mother. They say I'm not man enough. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were filled with 30 years of aggression. I suddenly realized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When discrimination hurts both men and women, its hypocrisy is exposed. In the days leading up to the lawsuit, I took my students to comb through 178 sex discrimination laws. We found that women can't apply for credit cards on their own. and men can't get childcare benefits. Seemingly antithetical provisions that essentially use gender as a yardstick for social division of labor. But even allies are questioning it. Dorothy, a women's rights lawyer, slammed the door when she heard the defendant was male. She didn't believe it. Having fought for women's and civil rights all her life and lost, she was naturally already disillusioned with the status quo.
Why, you think you can change the country?
Change minds first, then change the law.
A torrential downpour on the way home almost doused my enthusiasm, but my daughter suddenly fought back loudly against roadside frivolity.
I will keep you warm if you're getting wet.
Oh yeah, real nice. You kissed your mother with that mouth, asshole? Mom, you can't let boys talk to you like that. Taxi!
Shock struck me like lightning. I remembered what my daughter had said in the first place.
It's not a movement if everyone's just sitting.
If you put it 20 years ago, no woman would have dared to talk to a man like that. But times have changed. Women are becoming more independent and self-reflective, and cultural changes will drive legal changes. The eye should not be limited to the past, but look to the future. I changed the direction of my lawsuit. Once upon a time, it was just about overturning a law that discriminated against women. But now, the focus is on legal change. It's not just about pursuing equality for all. It's about the well-being of the next generation. But at a moot court organized by a friend, I had the most humiliating challenge of my life. The mock judge asked in a barrage of questions, "My wife is at home with the children. Do you think she is being oppressed? The firefighters be women and half the nurses be men." I felt the blood rush straight to my head when he said, "How can a woman be a judge or a CEO? What matters is the right to choose," I retorted with a near hiss, only to be criticized by a friend. "You're not debating, you're venting your anger. How about taking a step back and accepting an out-of-court settlement so that you can still get at least part of the compensation?" Standing in front of my mother's photo, I wondered for the first time if I was too naive. Is this country really ready to hear women's voices? I started rereading Beauvoir's The Second Sex, where women are not born, but molded. On the day of the hearing, an oppressive air filled the courtroom. The three judges looked at me with scrutinizing eyes, and one of them threw out the first question. "Are you worried about the law delineating the gender division of labor? Isn't the caregiver tax cut bill helping women work? This bill is premised on the assumption that women must stay at home."
There is nothing that women are inherently better at than men, nor vice versa.
The opposing attorney spoke like a dull knife. "It is the natural order of things for men to take care of women. Isn't this man, who chose to care for his mother rather than hire a caregiver, a victim of exploitation by lawyers who want to cause radical social change?" When he spoke of radical social change, I was suddenly reminded of the jurisprudence I read while visiting Sweden, where the law has long since rejected gender stereotypes. Just as 65 years ago, it was hard as hell for women to find a job, and a decade or so ago, women would have been arrested for revealing clothing, even.
And 100 years ago, I would not have the right to stand before you.
When I was at Harvard Law School in the 1950s, there were only 9 women out of 500 students. Professors asked me why I had a male seat. There were no women's bathrooms at the college, and the library security guards wouldn't let me in because I was a woman. There are now 178 laws that act as chains, not only for women, but also for men who want to be full-time fathers. The courtroom erupts in huffs and puffs as I talk about my client, Stephen, who has cared for his mother for decades. He didn't do it to evade taxes, he did it out of love. Why does the law penalize this human light? My voice echoed through the dome, and in a rare move, the 3 justices did not interrupt. In the end, the Supreme Court struck down that discriminatory law in a landslide victory. Discrimination often grows in silence, and we must take the initiative to break it. This is my story, a journey from Brooklyn Jewish girl to Supreme Court justice. I want to tell all those who are struggling, change may be slow, but if we persevere like Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill, we will eventually see the light at the top.